Welcome back to our adventure with this 97 triple locked Toyota Land Cruiser. Today we're going to continue disassembly of more of the engine parts and see where we can get. If it's your first time watching, thank you for watching the videos. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for the continued support. Make sure to click the subscribe button below to be notified when I add more videos of this build and others. So what are we going to do today? Let's see. We'll do the valve cover. I still haven't decided if I want to do the head gasket or not. We are going to be pretty far into this thing. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think by the end of this video, I'll know. So the valve cover, in order to get it off, you don't necessarily need to take the upper intake manifold off. All you need to do is get the throttle body off if all you're doing is the valve cover gasket and the donuts around each of the spark plug valleys. But I already got it out because I wanted to check those things out and also replace the injectors. So it's got a little bit more space than if you were just doing your valve cover gasket. But since all of that is off, this will give you a better visual on where everything is and where all the bolts and everything are. So once your throttle body and everything's out of the way, you've got access to all of the 10mm head bolts that hold the valve cover on. You'll be able to see where all of them are and how to get to them. The ones on this side will be easier if the upper intake manifold is off, but again, it's not necessary. You can get to them with the upper intake manifold on and just the throttle body off. So you've got a handful of bolts along this edge, 10mm head bolts. You've got one in the front on the center, and then a bunch of them on that side as well. I got all the valve cover bolts off, as you can see. They're all off there. Got them in a Ziploc and labeled. I also took the air box out. The air box is held on by 3 bolts right here, and right there. You pop those 3 out and then undo this clamp. This one's got a snorkel, so this looks a little bit different than if you don't have a snorkel, but it's essentially the same thing. Take that off. I'm glad I did. This thing's all cracked. I'm gonna see if I can replace it. Not a very great quality hose there. And I also undid the bolts for the heat shields on the exhaust manifold. They weren't too bad, but if you do live in an area with rust, you probably want to put some PB blaster or something on there to soak into the threads well before you want to get to them, maybe even the day before, to help break them loose a little bit. What I usually do for stuff that has a little bit of rust on it like these, I'll use my electric impact and put it on the clockwise setting to tighten them. Just do a couple blips, short blips in the clockwise rotation, and then put it on reverse to where it's going to undo the bolts. That usually breaks them loose, and I very rarely, knock on wood, watch I'll break something, but very rarely break a bolt off inside the threads when doing it that way. But got those off. I'm just taking off various random things here. And whether I do this head gasket or not, I am going to go ahead and replace the gaskets on the exhaust manifolds. I don't think I've heard any sort of ticking or anything like that, but since we're in here and we've got a lot of stuff off, I was going to go ahead and replace those anyway, proactively, and the donut gaskets that go at each of those connections that go to the Y pipe. And while I have these off, I am going to be replacing the motor mounts. You can see one of them right here. I've already got those ordered and they're sitting in a box in the back garage. So we'll use the opportunity to replace the motor mounts as well. If you've ever looked at a set of motor mounts on a Land Cruiser, I bet you that you've never seen a single one that has ever been replaced. They're mostly all original. Most folks don't mess with them, but it's a nice thing to replace. I'm going to do both of the front ones here and right there, and also the rear one that's attached to the transmission and the subframe. And that'll get those all freshened up, because after 25 years, there's probably no flexibility left in those at all. All right, let's get this thing off. All right, need to pry it up just a little bit. If you want to use a flathead at the very corners, I suggest you do it underneath where the bolt holes are, and don't put it underneath where the gasket is going to go. You don't want to damage those surfaces. All right, there's that. Let's put this flathead away. And I usually leave the oil cap on so you can use it to grip onto. All these surfaces are kind of slick, slippery. Oh, we've got the spark plug boot. Let me pull that out. It's the one I cut off because the coolant hose was in the way. Okay. And if you've got these little half moons right here that are stuck to the valve cover, I usually pop them off. That way they don't fall into the engine bay anywhere. And just put them aside. And there we go. All right. It was hung up on that very last spark plug tube. All right, that is out. Let's see. Yeah, everything looks good. And while I got this off, and before I forget, so this is, let's put it up here. This is the back of the valve cover. The front half of the bolts were all fairly tight, and there wasn't much leaking going on there, a little bit, but this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, and this bolt, all 5 of those, they were all just hand tight. That's definitely one of the sources that was causing the leak. That sometimes happens if you over tighten the valve cover bolts. So the gasket itself provides a little bit of squish, and if you over tighten the valve cover bolts to where there's no springiness left in the gasket, and you're kind of a metal on metal basically, then there's no springiness to hold the bolt tight in place to where it's not going to vibrate and loosen up. That's one mistake a lot of people make. I'm going to see if I can find some valve cover bolt grommets, and I'll show you what that is later on. They're commonly used on the Toyota MR2s and Toyota Supras to provide additional squish underneath the head of the bolt. I really like using those as long as they fit. I'm going to go ahead and source some of those and have them ready to go whenever we're reassembling this thing. So overall, what I'm looking for anytime I take a valve cover off is any indication of coolant mixing with oil, any other issues as far as overstaining or anything like that. This one looks pretty clean for the most part, and so do the cams and the caps and everything. You can tell that there has been decent oil run in it. There's a lot of detergents in whatever oil's been used. Everything is cleaned up pretty good. There's not a lot of dark staining on all the components. So overall, looks pretty good and decent. So we're going to put this away for cleaning. We'll get it cleaned up before it goes back on. The other thing you want to make sure to do is check the gasket on the bottom of the valve cover to make sure it's all there and that nothing's broken off and gone inside there. And then also pull off these donuts that go around each of the spark plug tubes. Pull them off. All of them came out fine. They're obviously rock hard. They need to be replaced. There's no flex left in these, but also inspect these as you're taking them off. If you notice, there's a bunch of material missing on this one. That material is somewhere over there around spark plug tube number 6. So I'm gonna have to go back there with a flashlight and some needle nose pliers or some sort of a tool to pick up the pieces that are left over. You can see there's a bunch of material there that has fallen out over time, gotten rock hard, and is no longer attached to this guy. Whoops. If you do end up in a situation like that where there's pieces of gasket or the donut's missing, don't throw it away yet. Keep it, hold on to it. That way when you fish the pieces out, you can line them up with the missing pieces on the donut or the gasket and make sure that you've got everything out. Basically use it as a little puzzle to make sure all of the puzzle pieces fit back into the missing chunks and that you've got everything out of there. And here's one last view of everything under here before we move on to the exhaust manifold, in case you've never been underneath the valve cover of a 1FC, so you know what it all looks like. All right, we've got most of the manifold hardware off that attaches it to the head. These here, you can see the stud pulled out because the threads from the nut were frozen onto the studs. We're going to replace all the studs and nuts as part of this anyway. If you ever pull off your exhaust manifold, get new threads, new studs, and new locking nuts, Toyota locking nuts. Might as well while you're in there. It's not terribly expensive. If you're trying to save a few bucks, yes, you can reuse the old ones. If I'm already in here, I prefer to replace them all. I went ahead and left this nut still on there, and there's one nut way back there, right there. That one's really hard to get to. I always leave that one for last. But before I pull off this one and that one back there, what I'm going to do is get underneath the truck and take off the nuts that are right here and right here, right here and right here from the bottom side. You've got to use a long extension and an impact generally. Again, spray some penetrating fluid on there, PB Blaster or whatever you like to use, so that you can loosen up the threads just a little bit and help get them off. Well, I'm kind of stuck on these. So this nut and this one are stuck pretty good. I even use my big impact that gets up to about 350 foot-pounds. It's not budging. Anything bigger than that, I think I'm going to break a stud off. This nut came off, this one here, and this one's also stuck. I did apply some heat with a butane torch on this one and this one to try to get the nut to expand a little bit, make it a little bit easier. Then put the impact on it again. That didn't work. Use a torque multiplier. That didn't work. I'm going to spray them with some more penetrating fluid from the top and the bottom and just let it sit overnight, and I'll try to tackle them again tomorrow. So while we're here, let's take a look at the timing chain condition, and let's see. Yep, still pretty firm. Timing chain guide plastic looks like it's all there. If you can tell, I'm looking for reasons to either change or not change the head gasket. Like I said in the last video, compression test is good. No sign of oil in the coolant, no sign of coolant in the oil, no sign of exhaust gases in the coolant. You know, everything looks good there as well on the timing chain. Maybe give me an opinion down below again. I know I asked for y'all's opinion last video. Now seeing some of this stuff under the valve cover, what do y'all think? Should I pop this head off and replace the head gasket as well? If I do that, then it would be a good opportunity to re-ring the pistons and put new bearings in the rods. But then I'm gonna have to get machine shop involved for the head. I don't, you know, my feel at this point is that it's probably unnecessary, and I think I'm gonna leave the head gasket alone. Yeah, okay, that's that. Head gasket is being left alone, I think, for now. Well, I'm gonna wrap this video up at this point, and we'll continue again on the next video, where we'll be doing more disassembly, hopefully finish getting those exhaust manifolds off, maybe swap out that engine mount and a few other things. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe for more updates on the videos as they get posted. Love you guys. See you next time.